Hey everybody, Rob Mullins here, and for the last show of season 6 of the Planet Mullins podcast, I have a fantastic drummer and a good friend of mine who is just a hilarious guy. I mean, musically, he's played with everybody big in the business and jazz and straight ahead in the New York scene. And but in my interview with him today, he talks about some of the crazy video capers that he does on his Facebook channel, which are hilarious. And also, he tells the story of how he found out about me while driving down Pico Boulevard in Los Angeles in the 80s. So buckle up and enjoy the interview with the one and only Gerry Gibbs. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and watch some of the other videos. And I'll see you at the end of the show. Thank you. You shooting these hilarious videos where it's just you at the front of an airplane and the whole plane is empty. And then you're like talking, you're talking smack about something that happened on the plane. Like, well, I guess everybody is in the bathroom all at once or something like that.
Yeah, I've made so many. I think it was that I refused. I was on my way to Arizona to do some clinics, and but I refused to. I had to have my own private plane or something, and here I am, walking around or something. Yeah, it's really. So I have a YouTube channel with that. It's called Beauty and the Beast, and it's because my wife is in a million of them. But I always had this thing. I always loved when people would yell at me, for fun. Like people, I'd say, yell at me because it was always fun to play the idiot, which I am in a way, And so, I would just, and it's kind of funny because it started once a long time ago. I was driving and I cut somebody off. This is like 25 years ago, and I cut somebody off by accident. And as the car pulled up, I told the person, "Oh, hey, I'm really sorry, man. I'm and he just started cursing at me, told me to pull over because he wanted to fight. And I was like, oh, man, and he's like, get the space. He's ready to go crazy. Like, let's go now. And I'm thinking to myself, man, I got to get out of this. So I just made up a whole story about. I wasn't married, so I figured it wasn't sacrilegious to do this. I said, oh my, and I have no children. I said, my wife and my children were just killed in a car crash, and and I'm just on my way to my parents' house. And all of a sudden, the look on the guy's face started telling me he loved me and he was so sorry, and could he do something for me? Could he drive me, help me? Do I need money? Anything? And I had to play this face, kind of like. Like an idiot. So all of a sudden, it just became a character later on. It became a character. And so that I had one or two of those in my life, and I had to get out of it real quick so I didn't have to get into a fight. And so I always made that character. So it just, we had the first phones that could videotape, I don't know, I would always think of something stupid, and I said, oh, I can film myself. I said, hey, let's film like we're on TV or something. And then it just went viral. And man, people walk up to me and they go, man, I saw your videos. It's like, man, I'm not famous for that. I mean, I don't know how they. No, I saw them on Facebook or somewhere. And, oh, okay. And then guys like Ron Carter and people like, they would see my videos and they would think like, Gerry, yeah, come on, let's make a movie together. So guys, it's just my flip phone. It's not really, there's no nothing, But I think, Rob, the very first one that then got me started is when I met my wife. We met on a dating website, right? And so she, we had never met. For 4 months, we talked on the dating website. And we talked on Skype. I think it was called Uvu at the time. There was no Skype yet. Okay. And so she said to me one time, because we talked every day and we videoed each other, and I would show her New York and stuff because she lived in LA. And but I knew I was in love, and I knew this was the one. And so I said to her one time, she said to me one time, she says, Gerry, how long are we going to do this? I mean, you're a musician. I'm sure you got women around and blah, blah, blah. and I was totally like not interested. I just wanted to attach myself to Keisha. And so I was like, so I went to go to Smalls. I played at Smalls, and I went to a taco truck on 7th Avenue and 4th Street and 7th Avenue. And I'm thinking to myself, hey, I can make a funny video and send it to her. And that was the very first time I ever made an actual video. And I said, and there were these 4 attractive women behind me.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, very attractive women. And they were all like very exotic. Like one girl had braids in her hair, and another one had like her hair was all twisted. They were just very exotic. And I turned to them and I said, I have a girl that I'm in love with that I want to be with. And I told them the whole story. And I said, will you make a video? And they said, yeah. And there was a transvestite waiting in line on this side. And I said, will you be in the video too? And, and he like, yeah, whatever you want, And so I told him what I wanted to do. So I held the camera up. I'm going like, I think this works. I think that works. And then I said, hey, Keisha, it's Jerry. I said, I know you think that, that I'm probably running around with women, but women are not even interested in me. I can't even, matter of fact, watch, I'll give you an example. Here comes one now. And the first one walks by and I said, hey, how you doing tonight? And she goes, oh, drop dead, and walked right past me. I said, you see, I got nothing. I said, watch, another one. I said, hey, I love your braids. And she walks by and she goes, oh, go to hell. So all 4 girls like drop dead, go to hell, get lost, as they walk by. I said, you see, I can't get anybody. And then the transvestite came over and threw her arms around me and kissed me right on the neck and said, hey, sweetie, how are you? I said, well, I guess somebody likes me. I guess there is somebody attracted to me. And that was the end of the video. And I sent it to her. And that sealed the deal for me and my wife. And then I'd make videos playing that same idiot, like when the transvestite was hugging and kissing on me. And I had to make a face kind of like, and that's kind of how that's stupid. So I've made about 150 videos. I've had Ron Carter in them. I've had Buster Williams in them. I've had Tom Harrell's been in them. I've had Wynton Marsalis was in them. I had Dave Chappelle was in one. Even recently, where I played the idiot again with Arsenio Hall, and I just do it with my phone. I just put the phone up, and I think it's some kind of stupid bit. The one that we were talking about the other night, I was at Dizzy's and I had my band, and it was like 300 people sold out, and I asked the audience if they'd be in the video, and I had my camera right here, and I'm introducing the band, and each guy, Tom Harrell and Buster Williams and Robin Eubanks and Warren Wolf and piano player Alex Collins, and every time I introduce a name, as I'm looking at the camera, people are going nuts. And then I said, and then of course yours truly, Gerry Gibbs on drums. And it's completely dead silent. I'm like, my mic off in there? And nobody's saying, I think my mic must be off. Folks, and Gerry Gibbs on drums, dead silent. And that was so I've gotten 300 people stage them with my little phone.
Well, being able to survive and thrive being a musician, especially in New York City all these years, it really is quite a testament to your character and your musicianship, because it's not an easy town to survive in playing jazz, is it?
New York, well, there was a point when I first got there, I got really lucky, Rob. I got the Blue Note after hours gig. So it was 6 nights a week with the Harper brothers. Without Winard, he had left. And through that, I was playing opposite of everybody. So we would finish our show and Joe Henderson would be watching, or Hubert Laws or somebody be watching. And through that, then I would get other gigs. So I had this opportunity for people to hear me. I was playing with Walter Bishop, Roland Hanna. I mean, this is all like within the first year. Larry Corea, Magus Band. I mean, it was a whole bunch of stuff.
Wow.
But New York now more than ever. It's really funny. I tell people this all the time. How old are you now, Rob?
Old.
Okay, that's what. Then you're almost 90, right? Sorry, it's not true. So I graduated from high school in '82, and I was 18, and I got lucky in LA. I was playing with Donald Byrd's Blackbirds a bunch, and I was playing gigs with Rose Royce. And I was playing with a lot of jazz guys, Harry Land, Larry Gales, Doug Karn's band, a lot of, Connie Gondoli, a lot, my dad, a lot of different West Coast stuff. And back then my rent was $325. I had this beautiful apartment in Hollywood that was so high I could see the beach and I could see the Hollywood sign. And it was amazing. I mean, it was like, and I paid $325 and gigs paid $75 to $100 in 1982.
Right.
Now your standard rent in New York is close to $4,000, and your standard gigs pay 100, 125 to play a local jazz gig. If you're just playing at a local club, so you're talking about 3 or 4 gigs to make your rent in 1982, and for the same amount of money, you're talking about maybe not even being able to pay your rent if you had $3,100 gigs. It'd be impossible.
Right.
So I always said Robbie Coltrane and I, we shared a two unit building, and my landlord, he gave us a good deal, but the rent kept going up and up and up and up and up and up. And for me, I did not want to pay that kind of rent anymore, and I want to own something. But in New York, if you were to buy something that was like 900 square feet, like a condo, you'd pay over $1 million. And at almost 60 years of age, I don't want to do that. If I'm gonna spend $1 million, I want to have 4,000 square feet, and you can do that where I am in San Antonio. And I still go out and work and travel, and I was just in New York playing with Chris Potter and Emmett Cohen last month. So you can still run around and do stuff, but I can save thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars a month. And in New York, all your thousands went into your bills and your rent. And I just didn't want to do that anymore. And my wife didn't want to either. So there's a great scene down here, Rob. I mean, there's so many musicians in Austin and San Antonio. New York, some New York guys come, and they're my musician friends, and they come down and they just go like, man, I can't believe all these guys you're showing me, like all these monsters. I was playing a gig recently, well, not recently, maybe about 6-7 months ago. There's a really super talented young saxophone player named Jerry Espinoza down here. People are going to be hearing about him. He's on my new record. He's a monster. And we were playing an outdoor gig, and Dave Weckl knew I was playing over there. He came by, and his best friend lives in San Antonio, and he heard the band, and he was like, can I sit in and play with the guys? And I was like, yeah. So he played a whole set. He played a whole hour and 15 minutes. Wow. And then he wanted Jerry's phone. And there's a lot of great musicians that are here, and there's a great scene down here. So I hope as the economy I hope it gets better, but if it's going to keep getting worse, I hope more guys will realize that there's a great scene down here, and you can still travel out here. You're closer to California, so you can go there. And, you're only to go to Europe, you can just fly right into New York and head right out, So I love it out here. And it's an amazing scene out here, which I never would have known. Right. I thought I was out during COVID and kind of relax and save my money because, we were getting pandemic help. Everybody was getting it, right, but we weren't buddy. So I was like, well, I was offered this home to live in, this beautiful home on the river. Didn't cost me anything. My wife and I were staying there free in it, indefinitely. And then all of a sudden it was like, people are playing, they're out again. And so I would just go, I have my mask on. I'd be like, oh my God. Andre Hayward, great trombone player, spent years with Ray Hargrove's band, with the Lincoln Center Orchestra, with Wynton Marsalis. We played together because Wynton used to sometimes come by my gig with Andre Hayward, and they would sit in with me. And so we always stayed friends. So it's like he's down here. It's just a million great people down here.
It's so great, man, because I noticed now that I'm spending more time in Denver, commuting between Denver and LA, I just did a PBS special for KUVO radio and TV out here, and I was just going to these jams, right? And somebody said, oh yeah, there's a jam downtown on Monday nights, and you need to come through there and just kind of meet all the young cats that are the Denver Cats. So I started going to this thing, and it was the same deal, like monster, everybody, horn players, bass players, drummers, keyboard players.
Located like crazy. I know so many musicians that left New York and they went to LA. and they're I just played with Dave Binney out there, and he's playing great and doing a lot of stuff. But I found a singer named Michelle Garibay-Carey, whose father was a very famous kind of blues, funk, jazz rock singer that was from here and was very popular in the early 70s. Used to play in Vegas all the time, like, you know, Sinatra, and they'd all be hanging out, checking it out. And she's an unbelievable talent. The thing in New York, it's hard to find people that will give you the time to work on music that might be challenging or all
Right.
you know.
Right.
And this young lady, you know, this is the first time she's ever recorded on an album that was out internationally, and people are going nuts, and they're like, "Wow, who is this?" She said she just has something. Sometimes it's hard, you know. I tell guys this all the time, and you can identify this because you've had a great career doing a lot of stuff. There's a lot of great musicians that just don't. They've never been in the right place at the right time, and when you're in LA or you're in New York, you'll be, you know, I mean, I always tell this story. I was in New York for a little over a year. And because I was doing the after hours of the Blue Note, Bernard Harper, great drummer, great drummer, who was at the time, he was working with Betty Carter, he was working with Tommy Flanagan. I became his sub for everything because he knew I was doing the after hours, and his saxophone player, Justin Robinson, gave me the gig because Bernard was going to be gone all the time. He was just out too much, and it was too hard for him to do the Blue Note jam session every night. So I did it. And through Bernard doing that, I was in the Village one night, just going to go out to hang out. I was dressed in some shorts, and I had just like a shirt like this. And I was like, well, you know, it's hot, so I'm just going to make the rounds and go to the Sweet Basil and go by the Vanguard. You know, I knew all the door guys, so they let me in. I really hadn't played these clubs yet. That came a little bit later. I was playing the Blue Note, though, in the after hours. So, and I tell guys this all the time. I said, so I went to the phone booth to check my messages. You know, there's no cell phone. I checked my messages. This would have been around 1990. And it's a message that said, hey, Jerry, it's Bernard. See, this only could happen in New York. Hey, Jerry, it's Bernard. I'm at the Blue Note. Listen, man, my wife just went into labor, and I got to get out of here. If you get this message, please call the Blue Note immediately. He's like, what's the number here? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, blah, blah, blah. And if you get the message, please call me immediately. And so I go, man, I don't have another quarter. I can't remember the number he said, but oh man, he's playing like we weren't doing the after hours. We were. I wonder why I wasn't doing the after. I know. You know what? Yes, I was going to do the after hours, but I didn't have my stuff with me. I was going to go back home and get my stuff and then go because it was early in the evening, like 8 o'clock. So, but I run, completely not dressed appropriately. I run to the Blue Note. I get inside. He's on the phone going, hold on, Jerry, you got my message? I was like, yeah. And he goes, hey, Jerry Gibbs just walked in. Thank you. I appreciate it. He's calling every drummer. Hangs up and he goes, Jerry, man, please, my cymbals, my sticks, everything's up there, man. I appreciate it. Love you, brother. And he runs out the door. I'm like, well, wait a minute, who am I playing? What's going on? You know, but all of a sudden, the manager says, Jerry, are you going to play for Bernard? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to play for Bernard. And he's like, all right, man, get ready because they're going on. He said, I see you got dressed nice for the gigs. Like, yeah, anyways, I didn't know. So all of a sudden, I'm walking towards the stage, and the manager, they're in this little room, and he says, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Blue Note. And I realized there's nobody on stage, so I'm not going to walk up on stage. I'm just going to wait and see who comes down the steps. And all of a sudden, I couldn't believe it. Every time a name was mentioned, my stomach started hurting. So he said, on piano, Mulgrew Millers. What? Yeah, on bass, Buster Williams. What? On trumpet, Terrence Blanchard. On trombone, Slide Hampton. It's like, wait, what? You know, on guitar, Larry Corea. Like, what? I'm trying to think of, man, I can't remember everybody. I should. I think Donald Harrison was one of the names. And
oh my God.
So then they said, and he looks over at me and he goes, and on drums, playing for Bernard Harper tonight, Gerry Gibbs. And I'm walking on stage. Man, and 45 minutes earlier, I was just on the subway going, oh, I wonder who I'll hear tonight. I wonder what I'll be seeing. So I'm at the right place at the right time.
So yeah, I'm here with Gerry Gibbs, and we're swapping stories. He was just telling me about this song of mine that he heard when he was driving like Pico to Western, back in the 80s, I would listen to the Wave and some other stuff. Jerry, is this the one? I'm going to play a little.
Yeah. Right. That was it. Yeah.
That was the one, right?
Yeah. So yes, that's the one.
Because you know the drum machine, and you know during the break we were talking about just when drum machines came out and who was using them. I actually was in Colorado and I had fired my saxophone player for basically insubordination, and I was like, I'm going to make a trio record. And I show up at this friend's studio. I said, I just got this new thing. It's called a Lindrum. It's a drum machine. Do you want to try it out? And I said, yeah, man, what does it do? And he hit play and I wired it in the studio. I was like, oh man, that is really cool. And that was the first beat that came up, but it was a lot faster. It was supposed to be Beat It by Michael Jackson or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so this guy was working in military intelligence. He says, okay, you got the piano, you got the 8-track, you got the drum machine. I brought over a Roland synth. And he says, have fun. I'll be back later. So I'm messing with this machine. It was pre-MIDI and everything, 1984. And I said, oh, I like that beat, but I think it needs to go down from 120 to quarter that equals 100. And I had it playing boom, 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 to pea soup, right? So I just reached over the piano and found that fifth thing, because I always dug the fifth stuff that Joe Sample would do. So I started playing that line, ba 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 ba. And the next thing I knew, man, I made an LP of that. I mixed it at another studio. I sent the LPs out. And that song is what put me on the map. That's how everybody found out about me. And I left Denver and moved to LA.
Well, just so you know, even though you wrote the tune, you just sang it wrong. You went do 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 do. That was the line.
Okay, thanks.
Help with your own music. It's funny.
We actually wrote really obscene lyrics to that in the bar that I was working at. And we had, that was a whole nother deal. But, you were saying during that time was like when I came out and Lorber came out. And then who was that record you mentioned that was like half of it was drum machine and then half of it was live drums with you?
Whalen record. Peter Erskine played drums on some of the tracks and there was machines on it. And he had this tune. It was some kind of hook like that. And yeah, so I was telling you, it's funny because I'm really known for being a jazz guy. Like back then, at that time, I was playing with Donald Byrd's Blackbirds, but I was playing with Benny Maupin and Billy Childs, and I was playing with and a lot of the real straight ahead, all the Harold Land, all the straight ahead guys. But I always dug that music because you'd hear it around LA. And I was coming back from the beach. It was like a hot day. It was really nice. And I think I was drinking my Coke. And I was like in my head, I swear, I think I had just met a new girl. I was going on a date, all excited, like, oh, I'm going on a date. Going to go home and shower and rest. And, and I had time and I'm driving back from the beach. And I had this funky car that had no cassette tape. And I think I could only get AM radio on it. And this would have been, so you told me correctly. So that record came out what year?
It came out at the end of 84 and hit radio in 85.
I was 21 then. Right. Okay. So that would make sense. So I'm driving back to my place in Hollywood from the beach. I'm driving down Pico. I'm getting ready to go to Western, go all the way down into Hollywood. And so I'm driving and I can only get, the only stations I could get in my car that I was okay with was K-Day, which was kind of, they played like Houdini and some of that early stuff.
Right.
And, and again, like all my jazz people were just like, it's like, hey man, that's what I can get in the car. And then there was the Wave. Remember they had the Wave. And so I would Wave on most of the time. And so I'm driving and I'm hearing this thing, doo-dooch, doo-dooch, dun, dun, dun. I'm like, oh man, that's really cool sounding. And it really fit the vibe. I was driving, I had my soda, I'm just driving, like, oh, I'm going on 8 and I'm all excited. And that comes on. I was like, man, I think that could be Joe Sample. Kind of had like I knew a little bit about some of those records, Southern Comfort. It had like a vibe. I said, but there's a machine on it. So I don't really know. I don't know. I'm not sure, but it had that vibe. Maybe he's played piano on it. And all of a sudden they said, oh, that's pianist Rob Mullins. It's like, so I didn't know who you were at the time, buddy. And I was like, wow. I said, man, I got to get that record. Maybe that record would even be cool. Like, I go with my date, I put the record on, and maybe I have enough time, I put it on cassette, have some cool, and driving, and I just said, man, you know what? Maybe if I turn down here on La Cienega, I can take, La Cienega's bad, it'd be too much traffic. I can take Fairfax to Sunset, then come back up, and I'll run to Tower Records and grab it if they have it. And I went in there, and I'm looking, and it's, hey, this is it, Rob Mullins. But I couldn't. It was the only record they had. I couldn't remember the title. Oh, well, this is the only record they have. I don't remember the title of what they said it was. Maybe, hopefully this will be it. And I bought it and I went home and I put it on and I was like, oh, this is great. So this I do remember, and it's coming back to me now. I'm taking a shower and I thought, oh, this could be cool. But I only had enough time to put the first side onto cassette tape because I had everything was my turntable set. And so then I had side, I only had the first side. So I had it on my cassette tape and I went to go pick up my date and it just kind of fit the whole vibe. It was like,
man.
So and I forgot to mention that to you because that's how we've never played together before. And we've actually never physically been hanging out that we know of, but I always knew who you were, but I still have that record. I'm sure it's scratched up and it's still in my collection of records.
Well, it's so great for me to just, realize the power of radio and also to the fact that you remembered that tune after all these years because 1985 was a long time ago. But I ran into Patrice at a weird hotel lounge in Johannesburg, South Africa, right?
But you want to tell this story about you and Patrice in a weird hotel? Come on.
Yeah, really? Well, I know you got more, but I'll just make mine really quick.
No. Go ahead. No.
Mine's really, mine's really silly. And, we had played with Hubert at this incredible festival, and I met Esmeralda Spalding and all of these great people come to do that Johannesburg thing. Or no, Cape Town. We fly into Johannesburg, then Cape Town. Cape Town is the festival. And I'm in the bar after the gig and I'm hanging out with Budway, right? And Budway is a great New York piano player. We've done Hubert's gig forever. I said, oh, I got to go to the restroom, Bud. I'm going to head over there and do that. So I walk out and I'm walking towards where the restroom is, and Patrice is walking towards me to go for the hang. And he takes one look at me and he's about 6 feet away and he goes, yeah, Rob Mullins. And then he just goes, yeah, Making Love, Soulscape, 1985. I remember. And then he just split and I didn't see him the rest of the night.
You know what? He was in LA. He was in LA at that time. So, they were playing it on the radio a lot, So, yeah. So, he would know that,
Well, it was 2013 that this happened. And, at that time, Hubert had me and Budway and then Leftwich. And that was around the last of Ralph Pinland doing the gig because Ralphie died.
Did you play the Blue Note? And when Rick Zunigar did the gig too, and this would have been around 1990 because I was in the After Hours band.
Yeah, was that the Jazz Vampires?
What were you talking the After Hours band?
Because when we did the Blue Note with the Crusaders, it was Dave Valentine, Crusaders, Jazz Vampires, and then the Jazz Vampires was the After Hours.
That not at the Blue Note. That band never was an After Hours. I know during that time because I was in the band for like 3 years. It was Justin Robinson, Stephen Scott, piano player that went on to play with Ron Carter and Sonny Rollins, and a bass player, Louis, was doing it at the beginning. Different guys came in and did it.
Okay, well, we never did the Blue Note with, or I never did the Blue Note with Hubert, but you did it with Roy Ayers, right? Weren't you in Roy Ayers' group too?
No. Roy Ayers was supposed to record with me a couple of years ago, but that's a story we won't tell. But no. This was the After Hours band at the Blue Note. We were just called the Blue Note After Hours band, and Justin ran it. Sometimes Philip Harper ran it, and that was. But we played after everybody. I remember Hubert played, and I remember Ralph Penland. There was something had happened. I don't remember why, but Winard was going to make the gig. He barely. I did it like 97% of the time, and he wasn't going to make it. But they made a mistake, and they called me at the last minute. I went to my phone booth again to check my message. They go, "Jerry, we were wrong. Winard's not doing it. Get down here." There's no way to get home and get my cymbals and get back. So I went in. And as I went in, I'm sorry, I love Ralph Penland, but I just remember I had no cymbals. I ran in because it was like 10 minutes before the gig, and I happened to be in the Village. And I thought maybe there's some house cymbals that I don't know about, because I always brought my own, and they didn't have any. And so Ralph was there, and I said, "Ralph, are you hanging out?" And he's like, "Yeah." I said, "Man, can I use your cymbals?" And he goes, "No, I don't let anybody play my cymbals." And he sat at the bar all night long.
Oh my God.
And I played the gig with drumsticks and a brush, and what they had, like some stuff that was left, and I just played on a snare drum, and that's all. No cymbals. And he hung out like almost the whole night. And I thought, oh God, Ralph. And we were good buddies, but he had a thing. He didn't like anybody touching his cymbals.
Yeah, he had some stuff. I mean, he would actually at Hubert rehearsals, because Hubert had a place that's called the Ogden House, where it's right Fairfax and I know Fairfax and Pico, or one of those cross streets, and everybody had been down to that studio. Like Quincy was in there, and Chick was in there, and Ronnie had done some stuff. Chris Brunt was engineering a lot, but we rehearsed for tours down in the basement there, and there was a drum set. It was all set to go. I mean, you can mic it up and make a whole record, and Ralph was always complaining about the piano player, David Budway, because Ralph's guy that he liked to play with was Herbie Hancock. And so, Budway is, do you know David Budway?
Very well. I used to play gigs with him.
Yeah. So, and Budway has played with Tane and done all that stuff. So, but anyway, Ralph was always so dark on Budway, man. And we couldn't figure out, why is Ralph so dark on Budway? And then we'd be playing along, doing something, and then Ralph actually, and this was crazy, because Hubert is very meticulous, as you know, like from that phrasing that he does with Chick, all that staccato and legato and everything. And Hubert would, stop the band because his rehearsal, but Ralph started stopping the band and giving Budway the business. And I'd just be sitting there like, what? And then,
Ralph, I won't say who. Ralph one time told a guy, and the guy, I remember the story, that he hired him, and he said, "How much does it pay?" And he goes, "Man, it's just a little bar we play at. It just makes $75." And Ralph was like, "Okay, great, but man, don't give me any solos. If it doesn't pay at least 100, no drum solos." And the guy thought he was being funny. He's like, "All right, great, yeah, no drum." So the first tune, he takes his solo, and the bass player takes the solo, and then the guy goes to trade solos, to trade choruses with him, and Ralph just kept playing time. Okay, that's what he's doing. Takes another 8 bars, and he goes the drum solo again for 8 bars, and Ralph was just playing time, and that's the whole tune. So he went back to the head, and when the tune was over, he said, "Hey man, what's up, man? What kind of drum solo is that?" He said, "I told you, man, for $75, no drum solos." And he meant to tell him to pack up. He paid him, told him to pack up and go home. But yeah, he get on. He tell Greg Kirsten all the time, play like Herbie. Play, there are guys on the scene, as you know, that they don't really have their own thing. They want to be an extension of something that they love, whether it be
something that they used to do.
And Ralph's thing is everybody has to sound like Herbie, Ron, Tony, Miles, and Wayne. He wanted everything to have that thing. And that's what he wanted. And he would do that to other people's gigs. I remember I went to go see him with Bobby Hutcherson. And I remember Greg telling me that Ralph brought a list of the tempos, how the songs with the tempos should be. And they were like, man, get this thing out of here. He was a great drummer, but he was a character.
Yeah. You had some really quirky things that would happen. And we ended up, at the bar sometimes, me and Budway had a Ralph impersonation that he did. Well, that's not how Hubert would have played it.
Yeah, right.
Not how Herbie would have played it. And we would laugh about it. But at one point, Ralph was coming down to my gigs in Orange County trying to take my gig because the glory years had kind of passed. And then when Ralph did pass on, I wrote a tribute song to the cat because I had done a lot of these tours where it's me and Ralph all the way to frickin' Africa, 26 hours sitting next to each other on a plane.
Yeah.
And so it's like he's reliving the Miles days and when he was 17, he left high school and all these big things. But, Wayne Henderson used to tell me all the time, Jerry used to say, well, one thing about musicians, everybody's got a personality.
Yeah.
You're just going to have to learn to deal with that. But the name that you just brought up, I think a lot of my listeners would be interested in is Greg Kurstin, because you know a lot more and you played with him a lot. And for those of you that don't know Greg's name, he's the guy that became Adele's producer, and I'm imagining an enormously wealthy,
did some Britney Spears things too.
An enormously wealthy guy. But Greg and his wife used to play this gig at Rocco's, which became Herb Alpert's club.
You're talking about his ex-wife, Pamela.
Yeah. And they had this wacky duet show with like bass marimbas and vibes and 50 cents and all this, and take them 8 hours to load it all in, and they would be dancing around. I was like, holy crap.
You go on YouTube and type in Gerry Gibbs, Third Trio from the Sun. We had a trio, and there's a ton of YouTube videos with us with Arthur Blythe, the alto player.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And we used to set up, and we became a band, and we did a record called Third Trio from the Sun. And Greg was wild. The thing that I loved about Greg is he didn't care that it took us 2 hours to set up everything. We would just load in, and he would, to get his keyboards the way that he wanted, he had all these videotapes, a VHS tape, and he would get like 4 or 5 of them the way he wanted. He'd tape them together and do the same thing here. And then he put that keyboard on, and he would bring his trombone and I think they had a tuba. It was, if you watch these videos, there's Gerry Gibbs, Third Trio from the Sun, and they were recorded in 99 and 2000.
Okay.
Then I did a project. We did about 10 gigs. It was Brad Meldow, Billy Childs, and Greg Kurstin and myself. It was my gig. And Meldow didn't have any keyboards. He didn't own any keyboards. And Billy only had his Fender Rhodes, and he might have had a Moog. That was it. So Greg would bring, he would drive in with 10 vintage keyboards for everybody. So everybody would have their keyboard, and he would bring them in and set them up. And I remember he would take the Moog, he'd take the tops off so that he could modulate everything inside. It was funky looking, but but part of his setup was to walk in with 2 suitcases. And I was like, oh, what's in the suitcases? He goes, VHS tapes, so that he could build. So at the Bellage Hotel, and Billy Childs was down below with 2 keyboards, and Brad Meldow was he played behind the piano, and then Greg brought him a Farfisa, a Micro Moog, and a Mini Moog, and then Greg had 7 or 8 keyboards, vintage. He would have Casios, the toy ones, and all this stuff. And Greg was really good at being the bass player, so he would do all that. But and we had a band, like I said, with Arthur Blythe, and that was. We would dress up we'd be like the White Sun Ra's. It was great.
Oh man, that's a record of yours that I remember, particularly because the title was so cool, because nobody had thought of Third Trio from the Sun.
Yeah, it just came out of nowhere.
That is
multi-millionaire guy that I had a girlfriend in San Antonio, and he had a record label in Austin. And some local guy named Claymore had called me and said, "Would you play on my records?" I was like, yeah, while I'm in town, sure. So I drove up to this guy's compound. He had a studio, and the guy who owned the studio was crazy, completely nuts. And so during the recording, there was some problems, and I was being very quiet. It's not my place, but they one or two things work, and they were going to scratch it. And I said, "Hey, do you mind me putting my 2 cents in? We don't really need to scratch it. If we took this out, it would make." And so the guy said, "Hey man, I like the way you work. Man, do you want to record something for my label? I got a label." And I wasn't with anybody at the time. And I was like, "Okay." And he said, "When can you record? Can you record the next day or two?" Since I was in town, I was like, let me make some calls. And I called Greg Kirsten and Pamela, and they said, "Yeah, we can do it." So not only did he get them airline tickets, but he wanted a list. The guy was a multimillionaire. He wanted a list of everything Greg wanted to play, and he ordered it so that it would show.
Yeah.
So it was a new Fender Rhodes, a new Wurlitzer. He already had a big giant piano, and we had no music prepared. So we spent. He got 3 engineers, 24 hours around the clock, and we would just sleep there, and we'd come up with some music, and everything was overdubbed. Every song had 15 or 20 instruments, and it would be us over 2 theremin parts. I'd be like sleeping under the piano, and Pamela would be writing the theremin parts, and then she'd be asleep, and then I would go and put some percussion. I put some piano, or I'd put some organ myself while Greg went out to get a sandwich. It was just like, and that's how we made the record.
That's an incredible story, man. Well, do you know how Greg ended up getting the Adele gig? Do you still talk to him? How did that happen?
Greg made it. From what I know, I talked to Larry Goldings mentioned my name to Greg that we were playing together, and Greg's like, "Hey, I have this long history with Jerry, but we hadn't seen each other." I think Greg at one point just said, "Man, I just want to immerse myself more in that world." He had the band Gay Guitar. He was going to leave that. We had the band with Arthur Blythe. He was going to leave that, and he just wanted to put himself in there. And when you're that talented as a jazz musician that has all those pop sensibilities, you could be a gold mine, because, as you know, a lot of producers, they don't even know where the C is on the piano, and they're making hit records. Greg, you need some strings? No problem. I'll write them out I'll write a whole string orchestration for you right now. What do you need? You want whatever the keyboard thing you want? And you could go in the studio, and Greg could speak music terms and this and that. And he had, and he was a very extremely talented cat. So I think that's how it worked for him. It was a really easy walk-in.
I never had a chance to meet him, but what's so great, man, is that jazz is really the foundational genre that the really successful pop people come from. I mean, Jacob Collier is the figurehead right now. What do you think of Jacob Collier's whole deal that he's doing?
He's the worst. No, I'm kidding. I'll just tell you really fast, man. So I remember, a YouTube video came out, and he was like, those first YouTube videos, I was like, the harmonies were even more advanced than like Singers Unlimited or the high lows. It was like really, people talk about Take 6. It's like, come on. That's not, that writing is great, but this writing is, even Take 6 to me is not writing as advanced as the high lows or Singers Unlimited.
Right.
That was like the best ever to have 5 or 6 people sing. And he was like hearing harmonies that were just so like all over the place. And I just remember it gave me a stomach ache. I was playing it for everybody. I was going like, man, this is so beautiful. It was like, just like hitting me. And then all of a sudden he started to blow up. I knew it was going to happen. And so I had a thing on my computer. It was called Soundflower. And I was able to lift all the audio. And I made my own CD of just everything that he had up until he became famous. He wasn't famous yet. I saw him Blue Note 5 years ago, and he did a solo concert. Came out in his pajamas. He had socks with holes in them. He had his pajamas on, and it was really innovative. He's really he's like a different type of cat. I met him at the Blue Note. He was real sweet. And I wish that I could, we all probably wish we could cross paths with him, but yeah, he's a brilliant guy.
Yeah. As far as the younger guys, And what I thought was interesting, I mean, the first thing of his that I ever heard was the a cappella version of Moon River.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like something's going on with these harmonies. It's like microtonal. And then he's doing these theory workshops. Oh, yeah, I go past the 2-octave system into the sharp 13, and this and that and the other thing. And I listened to him doing then all of the Stevie Wonder covers, which were just ridiculous. And recently, the last thing I saw of him is that he got a new product endorsement. Can you guess what product he's endorsing now?
Coca-Cola.
Croc shoes.
Oh, Croc shoes. Well, holes in them.
Yeah, because apparently enough people like you were like, yeah, the guy's a brilliant genius, but how about a pair of shoes? So, so he ended up like a year and a half ago, he got an endorsement with them and he wears Croc shoes on all the gigs now. I thought you'd appreciate that.
Cool. He probably looks cool in them.
He does. He does, man. And he's drawing big crowds. Now, tell us again before we run out of time, your latest album on the charts is called what?
It's Gerry Gibbs, Thrasher People, and it's called Family.
Okay.
I recorded with all unknown people from Texas, featuring an amazing singer named Michelle Carey, that is like one of the most soulful sounding voices. And we went to number 7 in our 4th week on the chart. So hopefully we'll keep going. If I can get this record to number 1, as my brag, I'm bragging here, it'll be my 6th number 1 in a row on radio. 6 in a row. We can get it there. So, but it has to stop at some point. I hope it doesn't with these guys, but Texas is full of unbelievable monsters. You said you were going to come out here and be playing soon, right? You wanted to come down to play in Austin.
Yeah, I she's on the agent is on a Texas timetable, so she reached out to me urgently. I got back to her and it's been 10 days. So but yeah, one way or another, man, especially after getting to know you, I know the hang would be great, and I'm a huge fan of your music. We got to do something.
Would be great, buddy. There's a McDonald's 2 blocks away. We could set up and play right in front.
I have my Ronald McDonald red afro and my NASA jumpsuit from the 80s I could dust off.
Buddy, I'm taking a look at you. Probably looked at that outfit at one point. I don't know if you lived. You got a looking cat to put a Ronald McDonald outfit on.
I don't know, man. We'll just have to see what happens.
Do you remember the piano player Keith Saunders by any chance?
No.
He lived in New York for years. Or Matt Cattengoob. Do you know that name?
No.
Player. He lives in Hawaii. He was what's his name's musical director? The singer Jack Jones's musical director.
Okay.
Right when I was in high school, they actually had a gig 6 weeks in a row at McDonald's. We would play inside at McDonald's. This was I was in the 8th grade, and they were all in high school.
Right.
And at McDonald's for food, they would get that was the price. All the McDonald's in Southern California put on music shows, and they had jazz. And man, we played at McDonald's. How many people out there do you know have played at McDonald's? They're losers. That's why you're talking to me. I've played McDonald's. You played the Blue Note. I played McDonald's.
I can't.
McDonald's a lot more money than the Blue Note, right?
God, I'll tell you what, man, it's been a thrill and an honor and a real treat to have you on the show. And we'll do more, man. Thanks again, folks. This has been Gerry Gibbs checking out his new album, and it's on the charts right now. And
go out and find your record. Go out and find your record, Soulscape.
Yes.
It got me a date. I had a successful date with that record. Somebody else can have a successful date.
After I put that out, I put out one called Music for Lovers in '92, and I still get email with photos of the children that were conceived to the record.
I've seen some of those kids. I wouldn't brag.
Gerry.
I wouldn't brag personally, buddy. Woo.
Man, let's talk again soon. That's going to wrap it up, folks. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Bye-bye.